Greetings, Tommy Miller from 30 Point Music Review here, bringing you The Hanged Man by Washington, D.C. four-piece Seasick Gladiator. Seasick Gladiator is a band that forgoes the traditional vocals of the doom, stoner, psych, nautically themed music that we find today, and instead implants a violin player, which certainly feels interesting. It's a departure from what we would normally hear in a band doing this sort of music. Overall, the album is 5 tracks at like 40 some odd minutes, so a long effort. The third track is 26 minutes long, and it is the title track called The Hanged Man. So have your patient pants on, everybody, if you're listening to this one. It is a slow to develop effort, and one that I don't know is for everybody. However, we'll get into each one of those little facets, and we'll talk about what I liked and what I didn't like. To start out with, overall, I don't like the production on this record at all. There is a lot of mishmash and mud between the guitar and the violin, and between the guitar and the bass guitar. So for instance, the violin will be playing while the guitar is strumming, and oftentimes you won't be able to tell where one ends and the other begins, which I don't believe to be a good thing. There are a lot of examples where they separate, and it works very well. At about, 4.5 minutes into the second song, we finally get something where there's a solo from the guitar, and the guitar goes high, and the violin stays low and keeps playing the strings. And you can really, separate out what is what and who's taking the lead. And instead, most of the time, it feels like all 3 stringed instruments are kind of playing the same thing in the same frequency with the same amount of, the violin doesn't really have fuzz, so the violin is very overproduced, in my opinion. Whomever did this ran it through a lot of compression and a lot of electronics. It doesn't feel, and maybe they did this, so I can't, obviously I wasn't in the studio, so I can't tell you. It doesn't feel room mic'd at all. It feels like they ran a pickup on this violin and then ran it through a bunch of compressors and put it into a board, and it sounds very digital. It almost sounds like a keyboard playing the violin. But I know the violin player plays his violin. I've watched live videos of these guys the last couple of days to try to get a better feel for what we're doing on this album. The guitar playing is good at times. There are flashes of really good stuff, especially on the last tune, where the guitar kind of stands out a little bit. There's a couple guitar solos here and there interplayed through many of the other songs, but not enough to really make you go, oh wow. Most of the time it's, I kind of wanted to hear the guitar do that differently. I almost wish they were panned out to different channels, or there was something distinctive about the sounds. What really gets lost is the bass guitar most of the time. I would say that this band doesn't need a bass guitar player. The bass guitar is 90% of the time playing the same thing the guitar player is playing. And when they do separate, there's this weird fuzz that takes away all the low end. So it could be the guitar. The guitar player could just be playing what the bass player is playing at the time. So I don't particularly like the production. The drums are very flat. The snare sounds good, which is strange to me. The drums are not good. The drum playing is really, really good. I think that's the standout musician in this band, is the drummer. There's a lot of fun fills, and it's almost kind of hippie drums, if that makes sense. It's very loose. It's very fluid. There's a lot of fills. But the drum sounds are bad. There are times where it almost sounds like he's playing on a beginner kit, like with bad heads or something, or playing with like styrofoam sticks. I can't really put it like why it's so bad, but all the drums sound exactly the same, except for the snare drum, which just sounds fantastic. And I wish all the drums had that much effort put into them. So my guess is they really focused in on that snare drum and got the way they wanted it to sound, because it really does sound good. So that's the instrumentation and the production on the record. So song by song, the first song is okay. You have to go about 3.5 minutes until you hit something different. It's kind of the same riff for the first 3.5 minutes. The production's real thin. This is one of the songs where the violin and the guitar just absolutely mish together, and that's not a thing. Mishing together is not a thing, but you know what I mean. And then there's almost no payoff. There's another part but the drums don't get big enough, and there's like this sort of gallopy thing, and it's kind of two riffs, and then the song's over. So, it's like, I feel like it's 3.5 minutes of build to nothing, and so you kind of get blue balled by this song. The second song is called House of Aristippus. Aristippus? It's Greek, I would guess, and so thereby I'm pretty stupid, so I'm probably not going to say that right. There's like 3.5 minutes of violin, and then there's a second riff, and then okay, so so I should shut up. This is where we get the first good guitar solo. It's 4.5 minutes into the second song. It's kind of more of a melody than a solo. Like, it's like the guitar running away with the melody, but it's good because the guitar separates out sonically from the rest of the instrumentation. I really like that. I really hated the ending of the song. That's what I'm going to give you for that one. The third song. So, The Hanged Man. 26 minutes, y'all. 26 minutes of a song, and the first 4 minutes is pretty much the same riff with a little bit of variation on it. And by the way, we're not talking about Dope Smoker here. They didn't rewrite Jerusalem, where you can get away with playing one riff for the rest of your life. No. There's a bass fill that sounds like a baritone guitar because, again, they've chosen this fuzz that takes away all the ass end out of their sound, and it really replaces it with the neighbor playing the stereo too loud. Does that make sense from the bass perspective? There's no ass to it. It's all fuzz. And that's not good. And there's no tonal difference. About another 7 minutes in, there's another bass break, and this one's really good. I really like this bass break because there's a lot of ass, and it's a little bit of fuzz and mostly bass, right? So it's almost feels like they mic'd this one differently. I'm sure that didn't happen, but they didn't oversaturate it with that fuzz that you're like, God, if I could understand what the bass player is trying to do because of that fuzz, it would feel better. There's a long, slow part towards the end, and it sort of gets loud again, and then it ends on this just terribly uninteresting bass outro that's like, there's no payoff, and I don't need it to be like build to this epic high thing and like be all these things, but it needs to be interesting. It needs to pull me in for some reason. I could not give a shit less about this song. It literally is. It's 26 minutes. It's literally like they were like, we'll see how long they'll stick with these just sons of bitches. And I didn't. I listened to it one time all the way through, and then every time I listened to it past that, I just kind of skipped around through the song because I don't care. Honestly, the balls to play 4 minutes of the same riff at the beginning is just, I'll give you this.
You did it. So, congrats on that.
The fourth song is called Persistence. The bass intro stinks. It's so fuzzy. There's no meat on it. If you're gonna start the song with the bass, really kick my ass with it, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to play that fuzz, and you're really trying to brrr a song in, and the drums are really kick ass on the song. I think this is the standout drum track for me. Though the toms are completely lost in the mix and they all sound the same. They all sound like do 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 do. The drum playing is really, really good. And then it's kind of a filler song. It's kind of a transitional tune. But after a 26-minute long song, I'll take it. And then finally, Plague Mask, which has a much better bass sound in it. It's thicker. It's kind of dirty. It's got a little bit of fuzz to it. There's a good delineation between the bass player and the guitar player. It's the best opening riff of the album by a million miles, and I almost feel like this one should have started the album. I'm not nitpicking track order, it's whatever. I just felt like when I heard this song, I'm like, I wish I'd have heard this song first because I would have liked this album better. So I actually do like this album better having heard this song, in spite of having heard it last. There's a lot of cool stops and starts and tempo changes, and I think this is where these guys really hit their stride. I think this is the strongest song on the album as a whole. It's got my favorite parts, and it's got the best overall feel to the song. I hope you guys can totally hear that outside right now. On a 30-point scale, I'm going to give it an 11. It's not terrible. And I know I just went on and on and on about how much I didn't like it, but I didn't like it. But most of that, I think, had to do with production and the choices of the bass fuzz and like not being able to understand what was going between the baritone, see, the guitar and the bass and the violin. I think a lot of it had to do with that. I think a lot of it had to do with the thin drums. I think a lot of it had to do with me not being able to understand the bass drum a lot of times, like really having to hone in instead of having my head thumped in, which is what this album deserved. It needed a thumping bass drum. It needed toms that you could hear because the bass player is great, or the bass player is fine. The drummer is good, and like the drummer knows what he's doing. So I really feel like it was owed better production. Again, at the end of the day, an 11 out of 30. Does it suck? No. Is it good? It's fine. 1 through 10 is bad. 11 through 20 is good. 21 through 30 is great. And then your sliding scale from there. It's not one of the better albums I've heard in a long time, but it isn't terrible. Would I listen to it again? No. But that's okay. Someone will like this. I can objectively say someone will like this record. So I like sea shanties. My friend Evan sings sea shanties on his Facebook page, and I often seek them out because I find them to be entertaining for some reason. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Tell your friends. If you would like to have your music reviewed, check out the email address right here that I'll put in. Look in the description. Anything you'd like to do to get a hold of me, email is probably the best way, or comment here, and I'll try to check those out. But I appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.